This is Sark on the biggest change in his coaching style, because this is, again, this is something you need as Sark to continue to grow, to continue to grow, to continue to grow. I get it. We're all learning every day. We're all trying to get better and be a better person every single day. But in coaching, sometimes there's a big roadblock for some of these guys that they think they're doing it the right way. And man, it was just a situation. It was just the player, or it was just the call. And I don't need to change what I'm doing as a whole. And when you don't change what you're doing as a whole, it makes all the minor stuff and the micro stuff much harder to change, because you feel the macro's right. So the micro, okay, well, you know what? You know what the problem was? I was running, 10% with 2RB. You know what? Let's do it 12%. That'll solve all the problems. And it doesn't come down to the being able to manage games late in games, which is the biggest problem Sark has had in the University of Texas. Here's Sark on the biggest changes he feels in his coaching style throughout the years of being head coach.
I think probably the biggest thing is just diving into the players, really having a connection with the players. When I was a young head coach at the University of Washington, it was about, how am I going to squeeze every ounce of juice out of these guys, and how are we going to win? And it was so focused on winning and kind of result oriented, if you want to call it that way. And now I think my connection with the players is such that, how do I pour into them in a way that is not always about just football, but about life and the impact that I can have on these guys on a daily basis, to where we can develop that trust, connection, that ultimately will then pour into the way we play. And if we do it the right way and we play really well, we'll get the results that we're looking for. So I think that's probably been the biggest change, is just connection with our players. And a lot of that, for some guys, starts in the recruiting process. For some of the guys, it's when they're here, especially the guys that you inherit. But inevitably, I think now I look back on my time, it's not having a connection with a handful of guys on this team. I feel like I've got a connection with all 120, and I try to be really intentional about that.
All right. You have a connection. You got a connection with all these guys, and you should be able to have a connection with them in the fourth quarter. And you should not need to rely on the guys that you only trust a couple. You should be able to rely on everybody then. If you have that connection with everybody, then we don't need to hear, well, I had to keep throwing it to Xavier Worthy. I had to keep doing this. And look, we're all hoping Quinn Ewers goes in. He's a first-round draft pick. He's a Heisman finalist. That's what we want from Quinn Ewers this year. But if he's not, if he struggles early, and if he struggles and can't get it together, you need to be able to say, well, I have a good relationship with Malik Murphy, and move him in. I don't want that to happen. I want Quinn Ewers to be the guy. We got audio from Quinn Ewers. He sounds like he's ready to be the guy. But you need to be able to have that relationship that when you come into the fourth quarter, you don't only trust a few guys. You need to know who you trust the most, and you have plays that you're ready to go, but I need to see the adjustments, and I need to see you have trust in this team to make the plays, to coach this team as a whole in the fourth quarter. That's what I want to see. Finally, I'll play one last one from Sark. He was on the Josh Pate show, the Late Kick with Josh Pate. Talking about leadership. It is the key that we will hear from Jalen Ford later. We'll hear from Quinn Ewers. It is one of the biggest pieces of what they're saying is going to be a change in this season. And it's big. It's not as big as fourth quarter adjustments, but it's a big change. Here's Sark on the leadership.
Well, I felt it last year. I mean, I really felt it at the end of our first year when, we went through a rough stretch in my first year here, and there was a lot of tough losses, and we lost a tough game. And I'll never forget Roschon Johnson standing up in the locker room, and he asked to speak to the team and really to everybody in the organization that was in the locker room. And at that point, you could feel a shift. Like, no longer was it just me trying to say what we needed to be. The players started to speak it. And I think that bled into last season. Roschon was a tremendous leader. Bijan was a tremendous leader. DeMarvion Overshown. The beauty of this year is I don't know if necessarily we have leaders like them or as good as them or whatever, however you want to call it, but we have more people in that space. And how do we get there? All the players that are here in year 3 in this program since I got here chose to stay, right? We're living in this world of transfer portal. But all those guys, the Jalen Fords, the Jordan Whittington, the Christian Jones, the Jaron Thompsons, the Alfred Collins, the Byron Murphys, those guys started to believe in what we brought to the program. They signed up for something different, but they're believing in what we're doing. Then the younger players were players that we signed that believed in what we were doing and said, I want to go do that. And so now you really feel a locker room full of guys that are committed to what we do and how we do and why we do what we do. And so we have more people speaking the same language. I think at the end of the day, as coaches, we try to set expectations and a standard for how things should be done. Well, now the players understand what those expectations are, and they're speaking to the standard and what it's going to take. And then when somebody's not meeting that standard, they're holding guys accountable to it.
There you go. Leadership is going to be improved. We'll hear about it more later in the show. I love it. I love that this team seems to be tracked on the right pace to set a new standard at Texas, or a standard that's an old standard at Texas, but a new standard for Sark, a new standard for the last 15 years of Texas football. Reset the standard, let's say. Not a new standard, a reset of the standard here at Texas. They seem ready to do it. They seem willing to do it. The question is, are they going to be able to finish out in close games? That's the question. Because everything else is just talk until they can finish out in a close game.